Todd Sesker is the superintendent of the Faribault Public Schools. He is on our AM Minnesota program at the microphone here in the KDHL studios. Yesterday, Todd, I was in Waterville. We were talking about their building bond referendum coming up next week.
Yeah, that's exciting for that group. That'll be interesting to see how that all turns out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing, hopefully a lot of people turn out and vote. That's what it's all about.
That's exactly right. Everyone wants to hear their voices heard, and that's the big thing. Win or lose, you at least hear the voice of the people, what they want.
However, I will say, I don't know that it's totally fair that a city can do a building project, the county can do a building project, not have to ask the voters, but the school districts do have to ask voters.
Yeah, and on top of that, on the ballot, it says this will be a tax increase, which even puts it even more difficult. So, you know, you always look at it optimistically, and whenever you're trying to pass an operating levy or a bond issue, you want to make sure that you get the message out so that those questions are answered earlier.
Well, you've been there before. By the way, before I go further, I wanted to clarify something for anybody that might be listening in the Waterville, Alicia, Morristown School District. I don't know that we made this perfectly clear yesterday. In a building bond is different than a levy referendum, right?
Correct. An operating referendum, the tax is valued on referendum market value. So basically for a farmer, it's the 1 acre in the house that it sits on.
But
A bond, a building bond, is on net tax capacity, and that's assessed on the entire acreage, including the 1 acre.
that's what I thought.
That's
So
right.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I was right.
You're always right, Gordy.
It doesn't, no way am I always right. But it does affect, you know, your decision making.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. Yep. It's definitely a decision that you have to understand the two differences between what an operating levy is and what a net tax capacity levy is or a bond issue is. So it's good to understand that, and hopefully they've done a good job out there telling the folks what that all means.
Again, before we go any longer here on AM Minnesota, I want to ask folks to please remember Bob Felix in their thoughts and prayers, a retired educator, assistant baseball coach, just a great guy. The Felix Center, of course, named after Bob, and he's in the hospital now, had kidney stones, I guess. It's painful.
Yeah, I can imagine that too. That's just, you're right, our hearts and prayers are with Bob, and of course Nancy works at the high school, and this is the first I've heard of that, so hopefully Bob will have a
She's
speedy
still
recovery.
working.
Yeah, she works in our counselor office. She's kind of like our registrar, and she does a great job there.
Well, that's awesome. I thought maybe she had retired as well.
No, she's still with us, and we want to keep her.
Yeah, well, so anyway, please remember Bob in your thoughts and prayers. Only got a couple of minutes here. I know later in the show I want to ask you about your opinion about the school districts. They have all announced the punishments that they have handed down to their respective dance line coaches, assistant coaches, in some respects the activities director. We'll talk about that a bit later on. But you were showing me you have a number of retirements coming up at the end of the school year.
You bet. This week is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we want to make sure we show our appreciation to teachers. So, John and Gordy, if you have a teacher that you really enjoyed when you were in school sometime, give them a call and tell them thank you, and let them know how much you appreciate what they've done for you.
Enjoy?
Yeah, exactly. That should be a connection there. So
no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But I do want to let you know about some retirements that we've had. We've got some fantastic teachers that are going to enjoy their next phase of their life now. We will miss them dearly. Over 200 years of experience with these staff members, but I just want to list them individually if you guys are okay with that.
How many are there?
There's about a dozen or so.
Can you do that in less than a minute?
I can.
Because I can do it after we get back from the market update.
I'll do it right now. I'll be fast, I promise. Ready?
Right.
Brad Redeman, Bonnie Becker, John Bellingham, Joe Dragich, Sandy Kane, Carol Mall, Janet Petrie, Lydia Fitzgerald, Rick Ross, Cindy Orr, Luke Havamaki, Jeannie Brown, and Cindy Trapp.
You did it. Although I thought that was 13.
Yeah, you probably counted better than I did.
I don't know if I did.
But congratulations, those folks are great.
Yeah, I know lots of those folks too, which means I'm older.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they've been a great asset to our school district, and we will really, really miss them.
Yeah, well, no question about that. AM Minnesota continues. We've got the superintendent of the Faribault Public Schools, Todd Sesker, in studio. We just went over the list of retirees. We just quickly ran off their names, and if you don't mind, Todd, we'll talk a little bit more about, you know, these people have to be replaced, right?
They do.
So how does that process work?
You bet. We've received their official retirement letters, so we have now opened those positions in the district to try to fill those positions. What challenged some of these, there's at least 2 math teachers in this whole group, which is going to be a challenge to fill, so some positions are a little bit easier to fill than others. But we're expecting some good candidates for these positions to fill, and hopefully we will be able to do that. We've already started the process right now, and so those postings are already up, and hopefully we'll have somebody on board, in the next couple weeks or so for next fall. Again, we do thank these retirees this year. They've put in a ton of time, and I can't talk enough about them. The school board did a great job. If you saw the school board on TV last week, of recognize each of these individual folks, and the two that they'll add at this next board meeting, I'm sure, to recognize our Jeannie Brown and Cindy Trapp, who've also done a great job with the district since they've been here. Finally, there's a nice article in the newspaper, if you haven't read it, that Nicole Yoakum wrote regarding Teacher Appreciation Week, so I'd encourage you to pick up a Faribault Daily News and take a look at that guest column by Nicole, and she did a great job of writing and thanking our teaching staff. Other than that, I think we are doing quite well this spring with staffing and filling in positions. Our budget's looking good next year. The legislature hasn't finished yet. They probably won't finish, if I had to guess. We're hoping that they'll be done by the end of next week, but they still have quite a ways to go in order for them to complete their job at the Capitol. But like I said before, we're looking good. This will be the second year in a row, actually going on the third year in a row, that we wouldn't have to make significant reductions, and hopefully we continue on the right track where we're maintaining and actually improving programs that we have out there. One of the cool programs that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that was just approved by the school board was this, it's S-Life or SLIFE, that we approved last week. We call it our newcomer program, quite simply. And since hiring Sam Oak, who is our EL coordinator this past year, he's been extremely busy trying to resolve the best teaching methodology for some of these kids who come over to our schools that don't speak any English at all and haven't had much academic help. And so we've created a newcomer program, a school within the school, in the elementary and in the middle school and in the high school. And the first impression that folks often think of is that here comes another program with our EL kids, and it is true, it is an EL program for our students, but we would contend that it helps all of our kids and all of our staff. If you can imagine having 2 students in a classroom that, in a 4th grade classroom for instance, that don't speak any English and haven't had any sort of academic background, the amount of time that our teacher spends with those 2 kids to try to communicate what the assignments are or to explain the lesson is tremendous. And what happens, in a sense, is that teacher takes away the time, not purposely, but because she has to. She takes away the time from some of those other kids, and it really takes away from their learning. So by creating these newcomer centers, one in the elementary, one in the middle, and one in the high school, we're able to take these kids into these classrooms, or essentially just classrooms, and then start with a kindergarten curriculum, a 1st grade curriculum, a 2nd grade curriculum, until they can catch up. And usually it's between 4 and 6 years that these students catch up with their peers and are ready to go in the regular curriculum. So it's an exciting program that we're implementing next year.
Sounds like it.
It is, and it's going to be, like I said, we're excited about it. The staff is excited about it. It was one of the programs that we put on the proposals that was nearly unanimous by all staff, and of course unanimous by the board. So we're excited about implementing that program next year, and we think it's going to do some good things. We're also applying for what's called an ADSYS application to the state. It's a fancy term for us allowing to apply for some help financially to hire some reading interventionists. And if we get approved, which we hope we will, this district would kick in $250,000, and then the grant would give us another $305,000 for a total of $555,000. And what that does is that enables us to hire reading interventionists and that goes really well with our response to intervention, our RTI model in the elementary schools. And the goal is to improve reading for those kids so that we get all kids to read by 3rd grade. The grant will allow us to hire 2 interventionists, reading interventionists at Jefferson. It'll allow us to hire 2 reading interventionists at Roosevelt, and then at Jefferson we would hire 1 behavioral interventionist and 1 reading interventionist, which all of these folks would be hired to work directly with kids, which is even more appealing to us because it does give us that classroom help that all of our teachers are asking for. So that's exciting too. So those things fall within our budget. In addition to the ads that we've put in last year, we're really making some great progress on getting to where we need to be staffing wise.
Budgetarily, you mentioned earlier, things are going very well.
They are, yep. And the budget right now, we haven't completed everything. The board is going to review again next Monday night what they want as their priorities to put into the budget. We are, as we look ahead for the 16-17 school year, we're projecting a 1% increase from the state. It looks like that might be about all we get, although we can always hope for 2. So based on those numbers, and then some inflation, our inflationary rate is 1.8%, which is a little frustrating. We're getting 1% from the state potentially, and our inflation's 1.8%. That math doesn't work very well at all.
No.
So we're working with it, but luckily Colleen Mertesdorf and Andy Johnson, who's in there right now as an interim finance director, have done a great job managing the budget, and we should be in good shape for next year. And we're hoping that the state will come through with a little bit more revenue so that we're not going to have to make cuts next spring. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're so reliant on the state and what they do. It's really difficult.
So Colleen's leaving us?
Nope, Colleen's been on leave for a while, and Andy Johnson has been helping out during her leave time. Colleen will be back in probably early June, and then full speed ahead in July. So.
Well, one of the other things I wanted to touch on, unfortunately we've had this visit almost every time you've been on since February. Mm-hmm. Hopefully this will all come to an end very soon. I was told by a high school league official that they were waiting to see what the schools did before they imposed any sort of discipline on the schools involved in the dance line state controversy. The 5 other teams that were involved during the high kick competition that the Emeralds were state champions in.
Yes. Yeah, and you know, the comments I've received from folks who have been supportive through this whole process were, wow, what an athletic group of girls. Wow, what a great routine, and what an incredible group of kids that you guys have down there. And so those are the positive pieces of it. But you're right, there has been, all the discipline has been taken by all the schools. Eden Prairie's dance coaches decided that they didn't want to come back next year, so they've actually resigned. The other 4 of the schools had a 2-meet suspension for the coaches, and then one of the schools had letters of reprimand. I think they all had letters of reprimand in their files too, and then one athletic director too.
Could you clarify, what is a letter of reprimand?
It's a step towards, if there happens to be another discipline action, then that allows the administration to reflect back. You've already got 1 letter in your file, now the next step would be suspension or something worse. So it's more of a building case of files for coaches if they are not performing well.
I know you don't know the specifics of the teacher contracts of these schools involved, mm-hmm. but they couldn't impose a fine, for example?
Probably not. I don't think they could with that. I suppose you could withhold coaching pay, but it's really hard even with the federal laws or the state laws with regard to paying people out. You've got to pay the people for what they work for. So fines at our level it's just not that common.
Okay.
Yep. Tom Brady might get fined, but I don't know if those coaches will get fined.
Yeah, for Deflategate.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting that comes out? 243-page report, isn't that what it was?
Yeah, amazing, and still nobody knows how they got out.
Proper air in football. Yeah. 243 pages.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, all the time that they spent on that whole thing, and it's, yeah.
And I will say, all of the districts involved, I might have this wrong, maybe it was 4 of the 5, hired a law firm to do an investigation on this.
Yeah, you know, that's out there too. I know that one of the schools paid for the law firm. I don't know all the details, sure, if they went together or not, but I know it was about $12,000 that they paid to have the law firm do the investigation. Now, there was one meeting that occurred this past week that I was involved in, and there'll be another meeting in June with the Minnesota State High School League, and they'll come out with their ruling too. I was at the Big Nine Conference meeting, and in show of support of Faribault dance team, it was a consensus by all the Big Nine schools, which is terrific to hear, to show their support in the state championship of our dancers at that state meet, and to show their support how well we did, and to say that what we did was right and what they did was wrong. And to have that support from all the Big Nine schools says a lot to our area, and to feel that support, it's almost like family when you go to those conference meetings, to know that you've got all that support from all the superintendents and all the principals and athletic directors in that arena, saying that what Faribault Public Schools did was a great accomplishment, and what those other 4 schools did was wrong.
Yeah, I'm sure you've read, I don't know, maybe you don't have time to read some of the comments that people have been making about all this. It really was on fire in social media for a good month after it happened.
It is, and it's amazing, the YouTube that was sent out from KDHL. I got almost 50 emails or text messages complimenting the job that KDHL did with the interview, and just the whole part of the program. So, and we were all up front. Nothing was hidden. It was all the truth. It's exactly what happened up at the state tournament. I was there, and Ken Hubert was there, and it's one thing that I will never forget. It's something that never happened, and I hope never happens again. Yeah. And I've been involved in athletics like you for most of my entire life, and just something I've never experienced.
Todd Sesker is the superintendent of the Faribault Public Schools. Last week, Chaska and Eastview of Apple Valley districts announced what discipline that they had decided to impose on their coaches. So that, as I mentioned earlier, brings to all 5 schools that have determined their disciplinary measures. And I already told you about the high school league, what they told me they were going to do, probably at their next meeting in June.
Correct.
They'll decide what their disciplinary measures will be, if any.
And that's right. Yep. So we'll know more after June.
So, to summarize, Wyzetta's head coach received a letter of reprimand, was suspended for the first 2 dance competitions next year. Todd touched on this. Eden Prairie's entire dance team coaching staff elected to step down for reasons not related to the protest, they said. Lakeville South issued written reprimands to their head coach, all 5 assistant coaches, and the activities director. Chaska and Eastview also reprimanded their head coaches and suspended them for 2 contests next year. Just wanted to get specifics as to what each district did. And I just wanted to get your take on that, Todd. If you were sitting in their shoes, what do you think you would have done?
Right. Well, first of all, I did hire a law firm to do the investigation, which I applaud them doing. The second thing, I do applaud each of the school districts recognizing that what happened at the state tournament wasn't right. I recognize free speech just like all of us do, but at the point, or at the detriment of using kids as pawns, I don't agree with that. I don't think anybody does, and I just don't think that they really thought through this whole process of what's going to happen. So I applaud the districts. They're great school districts. They're wonderful administrators at those districts, and they recognize that what happened at that state tournament was not the right way to approach this whole deal. My own opinion, I think they could have been stronger with it. That's my own opinion, but again, what's done is done. I would have liked to have seen different action. As I said publicly when I talked to my school board chair, if that had happened in Faribault, then those coaches wouldn't be around. So, it is what it is. I take what I can from it, recognizing that the admission of guilt is there. I hope the parents understand that of those schools, and the kids understand that of those schools, that it wasn't the right thing to do, and we can move on from here. The worst thing that could happen, I guess, in these penalties is to hurt the kids that may have not had anything to do with this whole process. So when the State High School League comes with their ruling, I hope they don't penalize kids by any sort of suspension of play or anything like that. I hope it's strictly with the coaches or with whomever else is involved.
Well, the argument could be made, Todd, that you're hurting the kids by taking their coach away for a couple of meets.
You could, but at least you're not taking away the ability for them to participate. So that's the hard part that people are having a tough time with. Do you penalize kids for this action, or do you penalize just the coaches? And I believe you just penalize the coaches.
Well, and there's some parental involvement in this, as I understand, too, because they were part of the protest.
They were, and that's a hard one to get a handle on, too, because you get that whole scenario from the start when it started where there was no applause for the faribault and all applause for the other ones, and standing ovations for the other ones, and then the circle that they did, and then the locker room issues that happened, and then even the waiting room. It was just like a snowball effect. And I think just as soon as people got involved, they got caught in the emotion and they wanted to be part of that whole piece. And I'm not making excuses for what happened, but that's the reality of what does happen when you have a mob type of thing that occurs, which is unfortunate.
If you could take us back to that day, because you said you and Ken were there watching the competition, did you recognize right away what was going on, or were you befuddled by what was happening?
I was befuddled, and ironically, there was a Wayzata gal in front of me who used to be a dancer that was watching it, and she turned around, because we had talked, and we had, I was from Faribault, obviously, told her I was a superintendent, and she was a former dancer, and my daughter's a dancer, and we talked and had a conversation, and my wife was sitting next to me, and then she, the Wayzata gal, turned around and looked at me kind of in, what's going on? And I said, I have no idea. And then, of course, my wife and I went back and said, okay, what's going on here? I had said last week, ironically, that, I hope nothing happens at the state tournament as a result of this protest by one of this individual that had started this whole thing. And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I hope this really isn't happening. I hope this really isn't happening. And then as we, when Faribault came out, because they came out right away, nobody stood up, but that's normal. You cheer for your own team. But then as we watched, they kept on standing up for the next team and the next team and the next team, and then pretty soon we started to click and started to figure things out. And then when they lined up and then they moved across the center of the gym, then we knew that something was up. So
the frustrating part about all this is everybody knew beforehand that they had been cleared of any wrongdoing.
Yeah, I kind of take pride in knowing ahead of time things, or anticipating what's going to happen. I didn't have a clue. I really didn't. I didn't know what was going on until this all occurred. And Ken, same way. And usually you get wind from the activity directors. They're talking all the time.
Yeah.
But no, we didn't have a clue.
Well, it's sad, and like you said, I hope it never happens again, because I think you put it perfectly. Using kids as pawns is just not right.
It's not. And we've used this example to talk to our students about, this is sportsmanship. You have to look at it and take a look at it. You don't want to be in that light. You want to be on the light of what is good sportsmanship. That's a perfect example of poor sportsmanship. And if we can use that to teach kids to be better sports in the future, then great. Let's use it as a learning lesson. And make sure that this doesn't happen again, and make sure that our kids, all of our kids in our community, go out and are good sports regardless of the competition.
And you know what else I suggested, and I didn't think about this until we were broadcasting the boys state basketball tournament. All the champion dance line teams ought to perform at halftime of some of those state championship games, boys and girls basketball. It would give them more exposure to the public watching and listening all over the state.
It is, and I think it's a great idea. The halftime shows of those different schools that participate, they may not even know what dance is, and it doesn't even have to be the same team, but once you see them perform, it's pretty amazing what those girls do.
Oh, I think I told you, when Lowell Noblin was the activities director here, and they were talking about making dance line a sport, and Lowell was one of the champions of that. He wanted that. He said, and I kind of chuckled to Lowell, and he goes, okay, Gordy. And I was a much younger man then, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I went into one of their practices, did the high leg kicks, the whole thing. Man, oh man,
Yeah.
It's a workout.
Oh gosh, yeah. And my daughter comes home, she said, oh, we did 100 sit-ups today, and we're doing push-ups, and we're doing the kicks, like you said, and they work a lot of hours too. That's the other thing that people don't understand. Sometimes 3 hours a night.
You almost have to be so much in unison that they are in their steps. It's amazing.
They do, and they love it. I mean, I've talked, for the most part, the kids really enjoy the camaraderie and being able to work together and work hard.
Yeah. Well, I'll be curious to see what the high school league does. Do you have any thoughts on that, whether they...
I don't. I know that Kevin Merkel, who used to be at Northfield, and
right.
Of course we have Tom Groutman, who's part of the activities director meeting in the Big Nine, so he kind of heard what we had to say too. They're very strong supporters of sportsmanship, and they want to make sure that we do it right. And I'm saying now I have all the confidence in the world that State High School is going to make the right decision, but we'll see.
Yeah, they'll do something, I think. I have that,
Yep.
I have that feeling, at least a high school league official, when I talked to them, thought that something was going to happen.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see what decision they make. But at the competition, in Class 3A, the other teams that were supposed to receive trophies did not receive trophies.
They did, and I have mixed emotions about that too, because again, you're taking kids, and the trophies. I'm okay not giving them the trophies, quite honestly,
Right.
because it's part of their team. But the kids, individual medals, I have mixed emotions about that. The kids who got second and third, again, if they didn't have a choice in the participation, maybe they should have gotten the second and third place medals. But again, I'm struggling with that. At the same time, I'm having a hard time with the whole taking away some of the performance of those individual kids who performed at the state meet and really didn't have a choice in this protest, and they were kind of put in the middle of it, used as just like our kids are used as pawns.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Todd. Appreciate your candor. And again, next time we meet, well, I guess we got maybe another meeting later this month before we get to the high school league meeting, which is next month.
I think we do. Just back in the school thing, everything's going great at the Faribault Public Schools. It's great to be a Falcon. Falcon Fridays today, I got my green on, and so we're enjoying it.
I like that slogan. It's great to be a Falcon.
You bet.
All right. That concludes today's edition of AM Minnesota. You're in tune to KDHL AM in Faribault, Minnesota. Have a great weekend, everybody.